European Society.
Hello, everyone. The call to order the 13th February 2017 meeting of the Victoria City Council. First order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, Council, any changes to the agenda? If not, can I have a motion to adopt?
I'll make a motion to adopt the agenda.
Second?
Second.
All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? We adopted the agenda. Next item is the open forum. I have two people that have requested to speak. At this time, Beverly, would you come forward? For the record, would you please state your name and your address?
Greetings. I'm Beverly Tokars. My husband and I make our home at 6900 Rolling Acres Road, a property bordering on Schuts Lake with a riparian right to that lake. I'd like to speak tonight as a follow-up to the City Council meeting of 3 weeks ago. I'd like to begin by thanking the entire City Council for the very considered deliberation given to the matter of the Waterford Landing development. I want to thank you for the time that you took to listen to the concerns of all the homeowners on Schuts Lake, as well as those folks not on Schuts Lake who came to express their concerns on the matter. We felt that the City Council members did truly listen to our concerns and did generally try their best to incorporate those concerns into the decision-making that occurred that evening. Again, I sincerely thank you for your consideration and your efforts, and while I don't pretend to speak for the other lakeshore owners on Schuts Lake, I do believe that many of those folks appreciate your efforts that evening as well. Nevertheless, what it came down to that night was, number one, what is the process and what are the current rules governing the process? Number two, was the process followed correctly? And number three, what are the possible next steps if the process was followed correctly? Those three items, we believe, drove the outcome that evening. Therefore, we are establishing a small group of folks to examine the current ordinances and process for development on small recreational development lakes, such as Schuts, with the perspective not that we want to oppose development, but that we wish to ensure development consistent with Victoria's moniker as the City of Lakes and Parks, ensuring that the nature of those lakes and parks is sustained to a very high level of quality while providing for the enjoyment of those lakes and parks by as many folks as feasible. Our small group will be working on the following issues. Number one, proposed modification of ordinances to ensure the protection of shoreland districts while facilitating development and redevelopment of land within the city limits. Number two, working with the City Council and city staff on forward-looking items such as a comprehensive plan to ensure appropriate densities of expected development in shoreland districts. And number three, working with City Council and city staff to prioritize stormwater management system updates around small lakes whose water quality has been impaired by aggressive development surrounding the lake, combined with outdated stormwater management practices. If there are folks from other small lakes within the City of Victoria who would like to join this initiative, I request that they email me at btokars@gmail.com. This initiative is not intended to be focused solely on or for the benefit of Schuts Lake homeowners, but is to be for all the City of Victoria and all the small recreational development lakes within Victoria, and we welcome the participation of others. We would also welcome the support of city staff as we sort through the current rules and processes and as we endeavor to develop modifications to those rules and process which we believe will best serve the needs of future growth while protecting the city's nature. Thank you for this opportunity to speak. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and all the city council members and city staff.
Thank you. Next, Lawrence Gooby.
My name is Lawrence Gooby. I live at 7848 Bavaria Road in Victoria, Minnesota. And the reason I'm here tonight is that it's my contention that in 2016, certain fees in excess of $225,000 were paid to the firm of Barry Hoff, PA, for the defense of the mayor, Tim O'Connor, and individual members of the city council, Tom Striegel, James Crowley, and Lonnie Bossa. These bills were paid in May and November of 2016. I base my contention on the following. March 31, 2016, Judge Janet Bark Kane in the Carver County District Court ruled that the above parties, Tom O'Connor, Tom Striegel, James Crowley, and Lonnie Bossa, had intentionally violated the open meeting law on numerous occasions. She stated in her ruling, in total, the court has found 11 OML violations against defendants O'Connor and Crowley, 10 OML violations against defendant Striegel, 6 OML violations against defendant Bossa, and 3 OML violations against against Joe Pavelko, who was not a defendant in the case. In 1992, State Auditor Mark Dayton referred a case to Attorney General Hubert Humphrey III, Skip Humphrey, that involved the city of Hibbing. That case closely parallels the case that Janet Bark Kane ruled on in 2016. In the Hibbing case, Attorney General Humphrey stated, a determination that defendants found to have intentionally violated the open meeting law by a district court remains in effect until this determination is amended or overturned on appeal. Therefore, Judge Kane's determination remains in effect as we speak today. It remained in effect throughout the remainder of 2016 after her March 31st ruling. In 1992, Attorney General Hubert Humphrey III further stated, here, while the city itself was not a party in the underlying case, which is the same as the case involving the mayor and council members of Victoria. Here, while the city was in itself not a party to the underlying case, the members of its governing body were. Furthermore, since it appears that a quorum of the council is not disinterested in the decision, in other words, they have conflict of interest, any reimbursement would have to be approved by the district court in any event. In spite of this ruling, on at least 2 separate occasions in May and November 2016, the council voted on and approved consent agendas containing items that included payment of legal fees to Barry Hoff, PA, for the defense of 4 of the council members that Judge Kane determined to have violated the open meeting law on numerous occasions. These are specifically check number 54925 dated 5/24/16, payable to Hoff, Barry, PA, in the amount of $19,733.01 for legal fees. The consent agenda was approved 4-0. Councilmember Striegel was absent. And check number 55693, dated 11/29/16, payable to Hoff, Barry, PA, for $5,470.81. Lawsuit legal fees. Consent agenda approved 5-0. In each of these instances, the consent agenda authorizing payment of legal fees to Barry Hoff, PA, was passed by the council, even though A disinterested quorum of the body was not present and entitled to a vote on the offending item. I hereby request that the city commence such measures as are necessary to thoroughly investigate the matter, and if it is found that payments to Barry Hoff, PA, have been wrongfully made, I further request the city to take all action necessary to recover the fees in behalf of the city. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there anybody else that would like to address the council?
I just wanted, Joe Doherty, 2425 Acorn Point in Victoria. And I just wanted to point out that there's a check on the consent agenda for Hoffberry, PA today for $4,184.79. And I believe that the mayor and council members have a conflict of interest in regard to that payment.
Anyone else? Okay, let's move on to visitor presentations. Lori?
Thank you, Mayor. Today we have the new VBA president, Joe Leeser, here to give us an update on the new VBA board and other activities that are happening. I will let Joe give a short presentation, and then we'd like to have some council discussion on items that will be raised.
Hello, Joe Leeser, 1177 77th Street, Victoria. I also am a resident. And I came here to talk about the VBA developments that have happened recently. I'm kind of tall here. How's this? Good enough?
It works.
All right. So thank you, council and mayor, members of the city. We recently elected a new board. We had some changes happen, and along those lines, I wanted to sort of come back and talk to you all about the great events that have happened in the city of Victoria thanks to the partnership between the VBA and the city. We're a non-for-profit volunteer organization. Our efforts are without pay and occasionally rained out, but we do appreciate putting them on. I know that lots of people come to town and participate in Classic Car Night, Volksfest, Discover Victoria Days, Christmas in Victoria, these kinds of events. They're the ones I go and I help out with, and I bring my children to, and I celebrate those good times with other people. And as the new board for the VBA, we're committed to continuing those kind of activities and celebrating all the things that we love about the city of Victoria. So a couple things I just want to mention. I'm the new president. They said, would someone step forward? And everyone stepped back except for me. I wasn't paying attention. I apologize. So I should have paid more attention during Hogan's Heroes. Laura O'Neill from Cornerstone is the vice president. Dan Norton from Enki is the treasurer. Beth Kennard from the Parlor is the secretary. And Stephen Ringquist from Helmuth & Johnson is our member at large this year. And it represents a diverse and different group of people than have previously been in charge of the VBA. That brings up an interesting point. Many of you may be familiar with Randy Miller, who I would say has been a bulwark of contribution for these events. He, as the president, when I've been around, has basically been a volunteer full-time employee for the VBA. So his contribution of time, talent, and treasure of his own towards making these events come off has been pretty much a constant over the last couple of years that I've been involved. And while we can't replicate that kind of time commitment, because really it was above and beyond, and we were never quite sure where he found the time for it all, we are looking to get that done and make sure everything happens. So to that point, aside from passively thanking Randy for that now, we'll probably figure something else out for him later because that was a lot that he put into it. That being said, one thing we wanted to bring up in dialogue is we may not have all of the time and resources that we've had previously with that kind of contribution. And I thought it was an important topic to bring up so that you guys can kind of talk about what you like about what's happened with the VBA and the events that we've partnered with the city on, and kind of what level of commitment you guys are interested in with regards to that going forward. we're still planning on bringing off all the events as best we can, and it should be great. But starting that dialogue, kind of figuring out where we're at is important too. So that's kind of where I'm interested in hearing your discussion tonight. So I also be available for, whatever kind of questions you may have, I might be able to answer to whatever degree I can.
Council?
Well, first of all, we really appreciate the work you do. And with Randy not in the picture, is he in the picture at all?
No,
Okay.
he's not.
I'm worried that the level is maintained, especially for things like classic car nights. And I'd be anxious to help you in any way to keep this going, to keep the momentum going. One of the concerns I have as a city council member is the whole business community behind the VBA, or there are portions of the community that are standing in the background.
That's
And
a great question.
Is that part of the problem?
What I would say, having been involved in the business community here over the last 4 years and participating in the VBA, is that we've had a universal interest in the success of what we're trying to do. No one has had a conflict with us from the business community as far as the goals we're trying to achieve. For the most part, it's been business owners, and like I said, since we're a volunteer organization, being able to dedicate time outside of running and operating their own business, really, that was the biggest challenge. You get people to meet at 11:30, so the people who can meet at 11:30 are there, but not the people who can meet at 7:30 or 5:30, and that kind of thing. I would say that also the new board composition and the people that showed up to elect those board members represented a more diverse and different base than we've had over the last 2 years. So I feel more support this year than I have recently. And I would say that's just a positive development of people wanting to continue and improve what's been going on.
I did run into, and unfortunately, I didn't catch the gentleman's name, but this past Saturday, spent a little time talking with him about the Classic Car Night. It was about a 20-minute conversation. I don't want to speak for the council, but I suspect that everybody supports that. The conversation I had with the gentleman was we absolutely want to find a way to make Classic Car Night and Volksfest and all of the activities the VBA has done continue. We'll clearly have some challenges this year because of the ongoing construction. I'm sure we'll be able to find a way to make things work. And then when that building's complete, we'll have to find some way to deal with the fact that we can't block people's access to what will be their home at that time. So unless the council objects, I'd like to see if we can't maybe have a staff talk with the VBA to come up with some ideas that the council could consider to try to keep these things going and see if there's ways that we as the council can help support not only the activities that they've done and done so well in the past, but help them keep these things going.
Yeah, that sounds great, Mayor. We've had some preliminary conversations and knew that tonight neither the VBA nor staff would be prepared with specific ideas because this is all recently developing. But we did want the opportunity for the council to give us that direction. That's something that you would like for us to pursue and bring back some options for you.
Is there a consensus on the council to ask staff to look into this and come back with recommendations?
I would suggest they just continue doing what they've been doing. That's been an ongoing process, and I don't see any change in the process.
Perfect. Any other comments?
Keep up the good work.
Thanks for all you do.
Yeah, thank you, John.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Thank you, Council.
Okay, the next item, the consent agenda. There's a couple of questions first. Lori, specific to the January 23 workshop, minor revisions I had sent in. I also see that we have the original workshop meeting minutes. Do we need to pull that off to discuss that? How do we handle that since there's been changes made?
Sure. As you've highlighted, there were some minor changes to the January 23rd workshop. The version that would be for adoption this evening is marked as such for adoption. If the council has not had the opportunity to review those changes, maybe just allowing a moment to pop those open. They are highlighted, but they are very minor in nature.
Let's take a quick moment. Council members, let me know if, when you're ready.
Why are we removing the statement campaign promise? I specifically remember stating that.
Agreed.
Right. I asked that for that correction because it stated, if I remember right, I don't have it in front of me, but if I remember right, it said the purpose of this is because it's a campaign promise. No, the purpose of this that I put it in there was for transparency, but I talked about the fact that I mentioned that in the campaign process.
Should we pull up the video?
I think
I'd love to, but we don't have a video of the workshop. We're not recording them.
I do think that when we look at the whole tone
Point
of,
of
Excuse me,
order,
I'm
should we pull this off, or can we discuss that now?
You know, Mayor and Council, if you're going to sort of debate the way the minutes should read, you should pull it.
Okay, let's pull that item off the consent agenda. In addition to that, I want to pull off the invoice for Hoff that's in the claims roster. Is there anything else that anybody wants pulled off the consent agenda?
Point of order, you can't pull a specific item, sub-item from an item, you have to pull the entire item. Meaning you can't pull a specific invoice, you have to pull the entire consent agenda.
claims roster.
Claims roster, excuse me.
All right, thank you. Then I want to pull the claims roster off the consent agenda. Is there anything else?
I have a question. If the claims roster is off the consent agenda, what is going to happen with the claims roster?
We would typically take up any item removed from the consent agenda immediately following approval of the consent agenda. Just
Okay.
Any other removals? Okay, can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda with those two items removed?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda with the minutes removed and the claims roster removed.
Is there a second? I'll second it. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no.
Abstain.
Abstain.
No.
So those two items are pulled off on a 2-to-1 vote with 2 abstentions.
Well,
All right.
Mayor, so we're getting deeper into Roberts than we might care to sometimes, but so if the abstentions are really not participating because of a perceived conflict of interest with respect to the claims roster, then you're right. Then the council members, the 2 council members that didn't participate don't count for purposes of counting the number of council members on that item. And so you're right, it would have been a 2-to-1 vote. If the council members are really just abstaining, then they still count. They're still part of the council, and 2 is not enough. So I'm not sure of the rationale for the abstention. Nobody stated a rationale, but if it was a conflict of interest, then the count is as you stated it.
So my understanding is anyone can pull something off the consent agenda. Is that not true?
Well, Mayor and Council, you're asking that's not a legal question. That's a question of process here, and I think that's been the practice. I think you're fairly stating the practice, but that's not a legal. There's not a legal requirement that speaks to that.
So Lori, would you pull up the meeting rules for the City of Victoria and read to us the part, I believe it states in there that anyone can pull something off the consent agenda?
it'll just take me a moment to pull those up, Mayor.
Just point of order, what, I don't understand the point you're trying to make.
You know what? I think you're right. So since we did not approve the consent agenda, does that then mean, I guess, we need to go through each of these sections independently, correct? Is that your point?
My point is, I don't understand what you're trying to do here by pulling up the meeting rules. That's what I'm trying to understand.
I want to establish the fact that we can pull this off the consent agenda. You guys,
I'm not disagreeing that you can pull it off the consent
Okay,
agenda.
super.
It's been done regularly.
okay, so the consent,
From a vote.
understood. Consent agenda was not approved, so what we'll do is we'll go through them individually. The first item on the consent agenda, we'll discuss that, is the council meeting minutes for January 23, along with the workshop meeting minutes, and then the revisions to the workshop meeting minutes. So,
Just before you dive into that item, I'm not sure if, well, before you dive into that item, what I've said in the past and say again is that your minutes, that there are two issues. One is the level of detail that you want to have in your minutes. There is not a statutory requirement on that. This city has modified in the past the level of detail in your minutes. That's one issue, whether the minutes before you correctly encompass the level of detail the council wants to see. That's one. Two, the minutes are to reflect what happened. They're not intended to reflect what somebody meant or what somebody was thinking. They're meant to reflect what actually happened. So I just would say those two things. Debate can be about whether or not something was said, and debate can be about whether or not the level of detail is right. But we should not, and I've said this in the past, we should not debate the minutes to change them in a way that is preferred by a council member now. It doesn't matter. What was said was said. So,
correct, and that's a valid point. My corrections were not to reflect what I intended. My comments and my revisions were meant to reflect my recollection of what actually was said, right? So I'm not trying to change what was in there. I think we all understand that we have a person in the back who's not a trained stenographer. I think she does a great job, but it's impossible for her to catch everything. Part of the review was for us to identify things that we thought were captured inappropriately or details that were missing, and that we would then submit those revisions as we thought they belonged into the process so that we got them as close as we could. So that's what I was trying to get at when I reviewed this. Clearly, Councilmember Crowley remembers it differently than I. That's fine. We were all in the same meeting, but there's a lot of things going on in the details. So I don't want the council to get hung up on this, especially to Lori's point. These are relatively minor revisions. But I will make one observation. It's for these types of reasons that I believe all of the council meeting, the workshops, and the committee meetings should be recorded, because if minor revisions are probably non-controversial, but there may be times where something is more controversial, and then a recording clearly will be able to identify whether or not an issue occurred. With that said, if Councilmember Crowley has objections to this and he remembers it differently, I'm fine striking that piece, and then we can just move forward. I don't think it's worth wasting time debating this.
Question is why you're pointing me out when you had at least two council members with the recollection.
I'm sorry, so Councilman Striegel, would you agree that it was wrong?
Absolutely. Very clearly recall that you specifically stated that you wanted to make these changes because you made a campaign promise. And I think there's plenty of literature out there to show that. And I don't see any value. In fact, this goes exactly to the point you made about the minutes don't always reflect the accuracy of the conversations. In this case, they did, and you're trying to change them. So I am opposed to that.
Not my recollection, but I'm fine striking those revisions, Lori. So to do this correctly, we'll take those revisions out, and then we'll have to look at it again at the next council meeting.
Just go back and approve the original minutes that are part of the packet.
Well, I made revisions in 5 different places here. So you mentioned 2.
The original minutes as published in the packet on Thursday or Friday are still published in the packet. You could choose to vote on those, or we can bring them back at a future meeting.
You know what? I don't want to waste the time. I'll remove all of the revisions that I put in and strike that. And under that scenario, what I'd like to do then is see if we can have a motion to approve the original January 23 workshop meeting minutes and the January 23 city council meeting minutes. Is there such a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve those minutes as originally written.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Abstain.
Those meeting minutes are approved, one abstention.
As originally written.
Correct, as originally written. Councilmember Crowley abstained. The next item, the claims roster. Specifically, I would like to address and discuss briefly the Hoff invoice, and I believe it's Barry Hoff, is that the one? Lori, can you provide a brief overview of what that is?
Yeah, Mayor and Council, Lori and I talked about this in advance of the meeting. I was going to take that. First of all, as I understand it, with respect to that particular item on the claims roster, 3 of you have a conflict. Mayor, you've acknowledged, I think, that you, in a meeting with me, that you have a conflict. Councilmember Striegel and Councilmember Crowley clearly do. I think Councilmember Gregory may wonder about whether he has a conflict as well, and that will be for him to decide ultimately. The rule on that, just so we're clear about the rule on conflicts, is that if you as council members feel that you have an interest in an item that's coming forward that's really quite distinct from the general public's interest, if you have participated in a matter in a way that the general public would not be expected to, you can find that you have yourself a conflict of interest, that you've put yourself in a different place than the rest of the public. So let's understand that. That would mean, Mayor and Council, that you would not engage in debate nor vote on the matter. Should you conclude that you have a conflict of interest. Again, I think 3 of you have already acknowledged that you would or do. With respect to the claims roster, here is what we need to understand. We went over this actually just a couple of meetings ago at the outset of this new council term. The people of Victoria have elected to have a Plan B city manager form of government. When you make that decision as a city, you are giving a staff person, the city manager, authority. That is fundamentally the nature of the city manager form of government. City managers have the authority to run the business of the city on a day-to-day basis, and that includes spending authority. City managers by statute have $20,000 in spending authority. This city has limited that authority in certain circumstances to $10,000. But that's the nature of a city manager form of government. All claims made against the city, all expenditures made by the city, whether authorized by the city manager or things that have to be authorized by the city council, all of those things appear on your claims roster. To the extent an item is something the manager has elected to pay within her authority, you are exercising an oversight role. You are acting like auditors. You're taking a look at what the manager is doing. On other items that appear on that very same claims roster, you are being asked to authorize the expenditure. It is not always evident, maybe to you, what you're doing, but that's what's going on. There are plenty of things that the manager pays on a routine basis or pays within her authority. This is one of those. I know that because she consulted with me about that back in 2016. So these invoices from Hoff-Berry are things that the manager is elected to pay. You are exercising an oversight role on those things. To the extent you want to pull that out and act individually, I guess we'd be down to Councilmember Vogt acting on that. And Councilmember Vogt's role would be to raise questions about it or ask questions in his oversight role. There is no authority, though, needed by the city council. So it doesn't really, I don't want to overstate it, but it doesn't really matter in a sense. You oversee the manager, and if you don't like the job the manager is doing, you have the power to make changes. But this is an expenditure within the manager's authority. And then the last thing, the resident that I guess led to this issue coming up, referred to a 1992 AG's opinion. I just want to be clear about it. This is something we've talked about in 2016 with the prior council. The authority for a city to pay for the defense of council members accused of open meeting law violations, the authority for that is in the open meeting law. It was added to the open meeting law since 1992. So by necessity, obviously, the 1992 case didn't have anything to do with that statute. I've read it. It doesn't have anything to do with that statute. The statute referred to in the 1992 decision specifically calls for the authority to either go to the council or, if too many council members are conflicted, to go to a court, to go to a judge. The open meeting law provision that Lori is relying on has no such language. There is no provision in that statute to go to a judge, and you would not do that. So
that's fine. I have a couple of questions that I have for you because I will recuse myself. I will not vote on this item. There's no question I have a conflict as a lead plaintiff in that case.
Point of order, if there's a conflict, we can't even discuss this.
Correct, but there is
We can't discuss this. That was what he just said.
Mr. Rose, I have a question related to the advice you've provided to the city specific to this that I'd like to get clarified because I've heard both. When you and I met the other day, you told me the
Mayor,
city.
just to be clear, with respect to the comments by Councilmember Crowley, I'm not sure I would say it the way he just said it, but fundamentally, I think I agree with the premise, which is that to the extent council members have a conflict on an item, you are not permitted to either engage in debate about the item, that's participating in the item, nor vote on the item. So, to the extent you want to ask questions about it, you are participating in the item.
What about if my questions are related to roles and responsibility between the council and the city manager and the city attorney?
You are absolutely entitled to raise questions about the role of the council and the city manager. You're not with respect to this issue, though. You have a conflict on this issue.
Mr. Vos, I need help. My father is a plaintiff. I stayed involved to the extent that I wanted to know what was going on. I read through much of the evidence. I sat through much of the trial, which was probably in excess or more than any other uninterested party in Victoria. I did it for a couple of reasons. I wanted to help my father understand what was happening in the trial. He wasn't able to attend. But I also wanted to know for myself what were the issues involved, and I wanted to hear both sides of the story. To that extent, I feel like I can make an unbiased opinion on this, but I'm not an attorney and I don't know what my legal obligations are to recuse myself.
Well, Mayor, council member, as you and I briefly discussed a minute before the meeting, the easy cases are where a council member either has a direct financial interest in a matter that's coming before the city council. You will benefit or be harmed financially by a decision the council is making. That's clearly a conflict of interest. The other clear example is if the city is being asked to enter into a contract with a council member or with a business operated by a council member. That is a clear statutory conflict of interest. There is no way to hide the ball on this. It gets more difficult when you get outside of those two examples. When you get outside of those examples into the realm of, is your interest in a matter coming before the council different than the general public? There is not a bright line. I wish there was a bright line. Trust me, I wish there was a bright line. There is not a bright line. We talked about, at the beginning of the year, we talked about the test the Supreme Court has laid out. There are a number of factors one is to look at, and I'm not in a position to sit here. I don't know enough of the facts of your involvement. I guess what you've told me, what you've said here tonight, I mean, to the extent we're acting as an advocate for one of the plaintiffs, acting as an assistant to one of the plaintiffs, your father, I mean, I think that does bring you pretty close to having the same interest in the case as your father does. But I don't have enough information as I sit here now to answer that question. I'm not certain of the relationship. I'm not certain of your involvement. I think you do, though, and just to try and give a little bit of help, I think you also have to be concerned about the appearance of a conflict, not just whether there is a certain or not certain conflict. You have to avoid the appearance of a conflict if possible, and that again is not for me to decide. That's for you to decide.
The easy thing for me to do would just be to recuse myself and be done with it. But I don't know if that's the right thing to do. I took the oath of office not to make easy decisions, and I didn't think I'd have to make so many difficult decisions so early on.
So, Councilmember Vogt, Councilmember Gregory, do either of you want to discuss item B, the claims roster? Then
I'd like to discuss it in the sense that I'd like to opt out of any oversight of that payment because it's not a council responsibility. It's in the purview of the city manager. Also, this whole controversy relates to the fact that there are individual council members involved on both sides of the legalities, but the city is also involved. The city is not outside this thing. The judge dragged the city into it and basically found the city partially responsible for some of these violations. And the city was ordered to pay plaintiff's costs directly, and even though it was not a party to the litigation, it also paid Joe Pavelko's costs. So the city is part of it. So basically, the city is involved, and these costs relate to the city. But at this moment, what I would like to do is opt out of oversight because it is not required.
If we opt out of oversight and we just don't vote on it, what's the ramifications? It just stays in the claims roster.
Yeah, Mayor and Council, procedurally, I guess the way that would be done is, I think I agree with Councilmember Curley, who initially said that simply pulling one item from the claims roster from the consent agenda isn't the way to do it. You'd pull the whole claims roster. I think I agree with that. That said, certainly you could approve the claims roster, vote on the claims roster without voting on that one item, and the consequence would be that the manager has already decided to make these payments, and the resident pointed out, has made these payments in the past. So the consequence will be that there will be no change. So, but procedurally, you certainly could vote on the claims roster, but for that one item. I mean, that's done with some frequency. Many of the cities I work with would have a question about a particular item and want more information, and then just vote on the other items and wait for more information, or wait for whatever.
Otherwise, or we could just have a vote on that one item as well, or could we just push that item out? Push that item out of the consent agenda and
Could you just clarify what you just said again? We could vote on the claims roster with the exclusion of this item. Then this item would be in the purview of the city manager and would get paid.
Correct.
Yeah,
that true?
and Councilmember, that is not different than what I said at the outset, which is that's your role with respect to, and Lori may have a better list than I do, but there are any number of things that appear as expenditures by the city that are within, and I think it's undeniably the case that they're within her day-to-day management control, and that she makes payments on utility bills, frankly, bills to invoices by my firm issues. There are plenty of things that fall within that category, and you see them. You see all of those checks. You see all of those expenditures, and you exercise oversight. You make sure that the money is being spent prudently. You do not authorize those payments, though. The manager authorizes those payments. So this would be no different. This is no different.
Further discussion by the two council members?
If we did vote on this item and it went to a 1-1 tie, could we then direct staff to get an outside opinion on this? Because in my opinion, based on that Attorney General's report, this should be decided on the outside by some other legal authority, someone that is not tied to this whole city case, this open meeting lawsuit.
Council members, I guess I'm talking to the two of you at this point. It sounds like Councilmember Gregory, you're on board still at this point with considering the matter. Yes, but you don't need to take a vote to do that. You don't need to have a 1-1 deadlock on anything to direct the city attorney to ask for an AG's opinion. My only hesitation on that, I mean, that's your rationale for doing that is perfectly good. I understand your rationale for doing that. I will just tell you that the AG is authorized to issue advisory opinions to local governments in Minnesota about roles and responsibilities and statutes that govern municipalities. The AG declines to do that with some regularity. I want to be clear about that, and they decline to do it one of the reasons they will decline to do it is there's pending litigation. So I don't want you to go into that with eyes closed. It's entirely possible if you were to give that direction, you're going to spend some money to have somebody ask the question, and then you wouldn't get an answer.
Just a,
But you can certainly take a swing at it.
Is the Attorney General the place that would need to be sent to, or could it go back to a Carver County judge?
Council members, I have a hard time conjuring up the scenario where it goes back to a Carver County judge without some new independent litigation being initiated. Is it the right place to go? It is a place to go. The AG gives advisory opinions about these kind of matters, for sure. I will tell you, they're not binding. They are just opinions by another lawyer, a pretty important lawyer in Minnesota, but another lawyer. The only benefit that you get, and I think we talked about this again at your first meeting of the year, is to the extent a city relies on an AG opinion, you have no liability for that reliance.
Okay.
Point of order question. Can we take a 5-minute recess for an attorney-client discussion, you and me?
Well, council member, the privilege is not between you and me. The privilege is between me and the city.
So that would be a no.
Well, I can talk to you, but it's not privileged between me and other council members.
I have a question I need to ask my attorney.
I'm the city's attorney.
Can I do that in private?
Can you ask me a question?
Yes.
Sure, you and I can talk in private.
Can we take a 5-minute break?
Councilmember, it's not privileged. It's not something that you could
Okay,
say.
that's all I'm asking. Okay, thank you.
Again, the easy thing to do would just be sweep it under the rug, let taxpayers handle it. But is that the right thing to do? And that's my struggle.
I don't think.
This isn't.
No,
Go ahead.
excuse, no, go. It's not sweeping under the rug. Basically, the city of, this is me, I'm not a lawyer, obviously. But I feel from everything I know and not being part of this lawsuit, either end of it, that the city is involved here and is responsible for paying this invoice. Because the city was found partially guilty here and has been paying costs, there's a precedence for it. So I see no need to go to the AG's office or whatever other county legal authority you want to go to. My preference is that we approve the claims roster without this item, and this item be paid because it doesn't require any kind of specific approval from the city council.
The city was involved, and the defendants were working on behalf of the city, but they were found in violation of the open meeting law, and I think that end of it, I think that changes the role of the city if they were found to have intentionally. Okay.
Council members, I just want to be clear about this. I don't mean to interrupt you. I apologize. But when I said that your city manager, Lori, has made this decision, I also said that, and I think she would go ahead and explain this herself, but she gave careful consideration to countervailing factors here. We understand this is public money. She understands this is public money. She worked with me on working through the issues. You are questioning her decision is what you're doing. So, I want to be clear about that. That's the nature of the discussion right now, is that you're questioning what she has evaluated and weighed. She works for the council, so you're entitled to do that, but let's be clear about that, and you can always talk to her about the reasons for her decision offline. You don't need to sit here and go through her thinking on each expenditure or this one in particular. So, something to think about.
Well,
all right, council members, further discussion, or do you guys want to make a motion? One of you make a motion.
I make a motion that we delay payment and send this off to get an advisory opinion from the Attorney General.
Is there a second? Motion does not pass. Is there any other motions? Actually, how do we, point of order, how do we handle the motion since three of us will not vote?
Well, I don't know what the will of the folks that can vote on this is, but to the extent you would do what I suggested, which is approve the claims roster with everything other than this, I don't know that anyone is unable to vote on that. I think everyone, as I understand it, is able to vote on that.
On the rest of the claims roster?
To my knowledge, there is no conflict of interest with respect to anything else on the claims roster. So, again, you don't need to make a motion. There does not need to be action tonight on that one item.
I move we approve the claims roster with the lack of one item that I'm not allowed to speak about.
Is there a second?
Second motion.
All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Claims roster is passed with the exception of the one item that I can't speak about either. That closes out the claims roster. There's a final item, item C. Unless the council wants to discuss that, I'll take a motion. This was the last remaining item on the consent agenda.
One moment, please, Mayor. I'm catching up.
Okay.
I move we approve a resolution approving conditional use permit for ZEA 10, Z10 LLC, ZO 10? ZIA 10? Thank you. ZIA 10 LLC to operate a warehousing use as proposed within an existing building located at 1495 Steger Lake Lane, Victoria, Minnesota 55386.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Hearing none, it passes unanimously. Next item on the agenda, accept donations. Lori?
Typically, our practice would be just to have a council member read aloud the nature of the donation and express our appreciation in the form of a motion to approve the resolution.
I move we approve donations from the Victoria Lions Club in the amount of $2,990 for the fire department. They're donating two our AEDs. What's that stand for? Automatic
Something
defibrillator.
electronic defibrillator.
Electronic defibrillator. And we thank the Lions Club very
Second
much.
motion.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, it passes unanimously. New business.
Next
Or-
item, Mayor, is to consider an award of contract for the comprehensive plan. Community Development Director Ben Landhauser will give a brief presentation, and then we'll take questions and discussion.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'll give you a quick overview. Kind of a more detailed summary has been provided in the staff report attached to this item for your consideration. I'm going to do my best to highlight kind of the highlights. In December of 2016, the council authorized staff to send out an RFP requesting planning services to complete the 2040 comprehensive plan. That's a statutory mandate for cities, much like the conversation the council had with the county earlier today, where every 10 years the county updates its comprehensive plan. The city does the exact same. As part of that process of sending out an RFP, there were specific things in the comprehensive plan that had been identified as areas where the city needed additional detail or wanted revisions outside of what is required by statute in that update. A few of those things have been highlighted on the screen before you. We had two identified growth areas that the city had requested some area plan work be included in the response to an RFP by any of those consultants. Those areas I've got on a map here shortly. In addition to those kind of growth area plans, also updating our parks, trails, and open space plan, as noted on the slide before you, and in the currently adopted comprehensive plan for 2030. The last time that the city had really looked at our parks, trails, and open space plan was in 2005. That update at that point had been just rolled into and incorporated as part of the 2030 comprehensive plan. The other piece that I know has gotten a lot of discussion was having a high emphasis on community engagement, and I'll try to highlight what's unique about the proposal being recommended for approval tonight. On the screen before you, the two areas that were included for kind of additional detail or analysis with this comprehensive planning effort. The south area, we've kind of generally referred to it as the area south of Marsh Lake Road because that's physically where it resides in our community. This is an area that's gotten quite a bit of discussion over the past several years since I've been here, particularly because it's an area that includes additional potential for commercial or industrial uses down at the intersection of 10 and 11. Also, I would note that this is an area where the previous comprehensive plan took a lot of time to push higher density residential uses and generalized kind of what range was acceptable in this area that I don't know we have a full understanding of what that really means. There's a good area, as an example, that guides property for 3 to 12 units per acre. From the practical side of development, as people come in looking at available properties in this area, to a developer, that could mean anything from single family to even apartment uses. So I think part of the exercise of identifying this area plan is, one, how does the city want to envision kind of that additional commercial and industrial growth? Additionally, what is the acceptable or preferred way that we would tackle some of those variable densities in this area that'll complement that commercial core, but also be respective of other development patterns in and around the community. The other area in this map, the west area, primarily guided today for additional single-family development. I don't know that that changes. The real intent of having a focus here is that we don't know all of the natural environmental restrictions in this area. There wasn't a huge test during the 2030 comprehensive planning process to identify how do we make road connections through this area that does have quite a bit of natural resources such as lakes or wetlands. Additionally, just looking at some of those sewer plans in this area, I think is another reason that we had put that focus to take another detailed look in that west area as well. Just for reference, this is the Parks, Trails, and Open Space Plan that was incorporated into the 2030 comprehensive plan. What you probably can't see until I start describing it is that at the time that this plan was adopted, the majority of the area around Carl Cry Lake that now houses the Lake Bridge community, Rhapsody, Ambergate, was not built out at that time. So a lot of anticipated or desired things of how and where trails and parks would be located, those have already been accomplished. So it's time to kind of take that next level of look at what's the desire moving forward now that we have more knowns there. Same thing could be said around Wasserman Lake. Most of that development has happened kind of post 2010. So a lot of reasons to take that as a high-level look through this comprehensive planning process. The firm being recommended tonight in their proposal, I think I outlined in the staff report tonight, staff received 4 responses to the RFP. Of those 4, 2 firms were interviewed by a panel of staff. The firm being recommended for approval tonight kind of had a unique way of engagement, knowing that our community largely commutes for work, isn't available because maybe they have kids or other obligations. We wanted to have some opportunity to reach people that couldn't sit in a room for some period of time and kind of hash through different issues. So this was one example. It's a tool called Social Pinpoint. And what it does is, as an example, what you'll have here, I'll actually go to the site. So this is a community not anywhere close to Minnesota. I think it's actually in Australia. But the tool is pretty cool. What could happen through this process is we drop in, say, one of those area plans I was speaking about before into this tool, And what it allows is, one, people can get onto the website, and if there's a land use like this kind of purple area, it will tell the public what that land use means.
Not
But,
in meters
Not in meters. No.
or hectares.
Correct. And as you can see on here, there are a number of comments that have been left by people from this particular community. So we have different topics, and this would be customized to our community, and with these specific area plans could also be used in our parks, trails, and open space planning, but really allows for feedback. So in this case, you can see a comment was left by one user that it went into the site, and then it could be liked and disliked by other members of the public. The nice part of this tool is it also has kind of data behind the scenes that can be pulled out by our consultant, so we can break it down to, if we have people that are very active on our trails, they may leave multiple comments around our community. We can identify, okay, this person maybe is more of a local expert. They readily use our trails. If we have gaps or we have things that are lacking or congestion, they could very easily be someone we'd reach out to and get a little bit more information and perspective. Same thing could be said for the housing side of things, and I share this more just, sorry, wrong one. As we get into some of those densities, people are able to share quite openly their thoughts about how they feel about our particular density in a given area, and again, people can like and dislike accordingly. This is a tool that can be used also for those area plans, the parks and trails, but also the general land use. So I know there's been a lot of discussion, even earlier tonight, had a resident raising some focus around existing areas of Victoria. Those could also be incorporated as we would move through the process, but kind of a unique tool that I thought I'd highlight under consideration for selecting the consultant tonight. With that, unless council has any questions, we do have a motion to award, contract, and select Hoysen and Kogler Group, Inc., to be our consultant for the 2040 comprehensive plan.
Council, any questions?
Just related to the finances, what again is the current balance of the stormwater fund?
The full balance of the stormwater fund, I apologize, I don't know that.
It's approximately $300,000 right now.
And I'm sorry, Kelly, I should have prompted you for this beforehand, but, and how much are we putting in that a year on the budget standpoint? I know we increased it, but I can't recall off the top of my head.
Well, we did set aside money for the comp plan update for this, so we didn't spend it in 2016, so we're
Thank
setting
you.
it aside, and then we'll spend it all in 2017. So we did set aside funds for this.
Thank you.
Any other questions, discussion? Can I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to accept the proposal and award a contract for planning services to Housington Cougar Group Incorporated related to the Victoria 2040 Comprehensive Plan.
Is there a second?
Second motion.
All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously. Next item, Lori, could you please provide us an overview of this?
Again, thank you, Mayor. This item is a little bit different than the types of things we usually cover. The City of Victoria has not been active lobbying for legislative positions. But as you know, we spent significant time last summer working with Xcel Energy on a project to install new overhead power lines in our community. We had a great group of residents that came together and said, that's not what we want for our community. What can we do to have a different outcome? You all know the outcome was to institute a franchise fee to pay the undergrounding costs, which, if the community desires, state law obligates the city to pay for. As part of that process, one of the things that the city did was join the Suburban Rate Authority, which is a group of cities that works together to, I think I can kind of use the word watchdog, keep an eye on the public utilities and make sure that our local government rights are not being impeded. Through both the Suburban Rate Authority and the League of Minnesota Cities, we became aware of a bill that is going to be moving through the legislature that would allow small cell companies to attach equipment to publicly owned, city-owned infrastructure and install items in the city right-of-way without a permit, without a fee, and without the ability for the city to recover third-party vendors. All of that is quite problematic, I think, for us. And I do want to say that, especially in a community like Victoria, emerging technology is important, and we're supportive of having it here, but we want to make sure that the protections that local government has to protect our rights-of-way and our infrastructure remain intact. And so the reason I bring this forward to you tonight is that city staff would like to reach out to our representative, Joe Hoppe, who is an author of this bill, a sponsor, as well as other legislators, to express our very serious concerns about the impact of this bill. Because the council has not previously taken a policy position on something like this, I wanted to make sure that we discussed it. I'd also plan to reach out to those folks that were very involved in the Excel decision, because I think this is something that they would want to become educated and perhaps take a position on. Happy to take any questions. I will note that this is Bob's area of expertise, so he may have further insight into the technicalities of the bill. But in general, we're just looking to make sure we're all on the same page, that this is something that we should be working on to make sure that the city's interests are protected.
Thank you, Lori. Bob, based on that, is there anything you would like to add?
Yeah, Mayor and Council, I think that's good, a good suggestion that you reach out to your local legislator on that. I will say that on behalf of the Suburban Rate Authority, we met today with a large group, 15 or so municipal representatives, city engineers, city attorneys. I was there on behalf of the Suburban Rate Authority. We met with the two industry proponents. There are 4 wireless companies, T-Mobile, Verizon, AT&T, and Sprint. 2 of those 4 are the proponents for this bill. Those 2 companies met with all of these city folks today, and I can say with some cautious optimism that they heard the message that this was very problematic, and I think they're going to go back and try again. So there's reason to be hopeful, but I think reaching out to your legislator would be a great thing.
Council, discussions, questions? Okay. Moving on to the next item on the agenda, unfinished business. Committee discussion. Lori, if you could please set this up for us.
Thank you. I can do that, Mayor. What I thought we'd do tonight, there were a number of proposals. At our previous meeting, we covered items 1 through 4, and I plan to revisit those and confirm what the outcomes were. But I thought tonight we would start with Proposal 5, as we do have the committee chair in attendance, who had previously requested that he have a couple moments to speak to the group. And so as you recall, proposal number 5 had to do with Victoria for a Lifetime Committee and whether that should continue to be an official committee of the city that would operate subject to the open meeting law, which is our policy when it comes to committees. And Mayor, I would defer to you if you'd like to speak first or invite Chair Asplund to speak.
If the council doesn't object, I'd like the chair of the Victoria for a Lifetime to come up, since he did ask to speak before we ran out of time. He didn't have an opportunity.
Hi. Paul Asplund, 8425 Spruce Point. Basically, it is our, excuse me, our request that you approve the Victoria for a Lifetime Committee to conduct business as it has been conducting in the past, with no open meeting rules and regulations, no tape recording. We want to conduct business as usual.
Council? Thank you, Paul. When we last talked about this, we ran out of time in the workshop. So, when you had 2 minutes, you really didn't have time to fully discuss it. I want to make sure it's clear, since I brought this forward and suggested the reforms, that there's no misunderstanding of what I'm talking about. Specific to the Victoria for a Lifetime Committee, what I was trying to do in having the discussion about potentially making that no longer an official committee was so that they could specifically avoid having to go to open meeting law training that I was suggesting, and specifically avoid being recorded. So most of you don't know that my professional background is a compliance officer in healthcare. This committee, to the best of my knowledge, is not subject to HIPAA, but there is, I've been told, people's personal health information being discussed. I don't want that recorded. I do not want to make this harder. The other item that the city manager and I had discussed prior to this coming up that we didn't get a chance to discuss at the workshop is, secondly, should the council decide to make it keep it in place, but not as an official committee. I know as an official committee, it gets some minimal amount of financial support. So the only way I would move it over is if there's a legal way for us to continue some sort of support. And then finally, I do believe in the committee and the work they do, and I do believe it's important. I would also, if we did what I would like to see done, is we would still have a council liaison to the committee, just not have it as a formal committee. And just like what's happened before in council meetings, where, for example, the Lions Club has come up and given a presentation to items that are important to them. It's a big, Lions Club, as you well know, is an important local organization. I would extend the same courtesy, if you will, to the Victoria for a Lifetime Committee. So what I'm trying to do here is have them avoid that training, avoid the recording. I don't want that personal information recorded. I want to continue the financial support, which is, if I remember right, $500 a year. It's a minimal amount.
$750, but
$750. So I want to continue all that in place, but yet not have them go through the training and other things. So now that I've kind of, if you will, hopefully clarified what I wanted to talk about specific to the committee, let me turn it over to the council for your thoughts.
Mr. Mayor, I'm trying really hard to find a way to work with you. I'm challenged. I spoke at length with the committee member, or excuse me, the committee chair, Paul, on this, and I understand quite a bit more detail than what was presented here of what potentially some of the challenges are. And I preface this when I'm trying to find a way to work with you. You are the mayor, you are the elected official, but the challenge I'm running into is I lost count of how many times you said "I" in your preface. This isn't about you. This is about the city of Victoria. This is about the committee members and the important work that they're doing. And I guess what I would like to try to do is to continue with the committee as it is right now, and basically, as committee chair Asplin has stated, how do we continue with the Victoria for a Lifetime Committee in the current format, current support, current approach, no changes? How do we do that? And I ask our attorney.
I can probably actually take a stab at that, Councilmember Crowley.
Thank you.
Currently, the Victoria for a Lifetime Committee operates in compliance with the open meeting law. We post those meetings as open meetings. We take minutes, and those are available to the public. That's all available on our website through Agenda Manager. And so there isn't an issue from that perspective.
So if we don't have to make any changes, and we can continue working, they can continue working as they have been. Is that correct?
That is correct.
That's what I want to do. Do I need to make a motion?
No, I agree.
Other discussion?
I agree. I mean, I think the whole thing got somewhat misconstrued, and it was somewhat stumbled out of the gate kind of thing. We were informed that we had an opportunity to take a look at all these committees. Do we want to make any changes? We didn't have time to discuss it, and because we didn't have time to discuss it, I think things got lost in the interpretation of what we were trying to do. I think a better word than to decertify was to go informal versus formal. If we went more of an informal type committee, the thought process was maybe we could strengthen the committee, maybe under a more relaxed atmosphere, without the constraints of having to take minutes, without having to post meetings, without having to put all the names of all the members on the website. Maybe there would be a little bit more openness, and we wouldn't have to worry about HIPAA violations or anything like that. Again, more informal, but still have the ability to come to the council, bring recommendations. In other words, make the committee better. It got misconstrued. Unfortunately, I had a good conversation with Mr. Asplin this morning over coffee. He would like to keep it the same. We don't record meetings. I was put on record not wanting to record last time. Even under the regulations of taking minutes, I think we can get into some difficulties there with some possible HIPAA violations. But Mr. Asplin wants to keep everything the same, and that's great. He informed me that we have several new members coming on board, which is wonderful. That was the goal, is try to increase the membership, and if we want to keep it the same, let's keep it the same. Mr. Asplin also mentioned that there isn't anything on the website. We don't even have the members listed on the website, so we need to make a few of those changes, get the members on the website, and then a little bit of description about what they do. So we're all on board. I think we want to keep it the same. We don't want to record it. We just want to wanted to make it better.
I say continue as is.
I was the one who kind of pushed through a quick vote last time, and I did that, apologies to the commission, to make an unambiguous statement that we value their work, and under no circumstances would I support decertifying it as it was originally presented. So again, apologies for pushing it through. I certainly appreciate that you had an opinion and a desire to speak, and thank you for coming back and doing that tonight. Think about this general topic of reforming the committees and commissions, and I think like reform school, like what ills, what crimes were committed here, what problem are we trying to solve? And I struggle to find one. In this particular case, HIPAA or personal discussions was referenced, and I think many people who come to all of the committees and commissions bring their personal experiences, and it's their community, and they want to make it better. And I don't think the discussion will be as colorful in a good way if everybody is subject to recording. I think we as a council have an obligation to ask the questions related to recommendations. It's our responsibility. And none of these committees or commissions have any decision-making authority. That lies with us. And so I'm not sure I see a whole lot of value to recording, and I can definitely see a significant downside. So specific to the Victoria for a Lifetime Commission, I think continuing as is an appropriate way to proceed.
Okay, we have a majority of the council, so I think that point's been discussed. We don't need a motion on that. The other item that's up here is council interviews for appointments. Council discussion? Well, if nobody else,
I think we decided that we would continue as is, and
right. So Lori, I don't know if we do it here, but the council interview for appointments for the committees is a broader topic in the sense that we have inconsistent standards as far as how we're doing this. Some committees we actually do interviews for. Some committees we do not.
We're going to get to that one under number 7.
Okay, so we'll wait until number 7 then. All right, let's go to number 6 then.
Okay, proposal number 6 was whether to continue to operate the pool committee as is or to fold the subcommittee into the Park and Rec committee. The brief history, the pool committee was established in the spring of 2016 to explore the feasibility of building a pool or aquatic center in Victoria after a group of residents approached the council with interest in the topic. The subcommittee reports to the Park and Rec committee, and the Park and Rec committee then reports to the city council. I will note that the pool committee is anticipating that they have 2 or 3 meetings left to conduct in 2017. They think that they'll wrap up their work in June of this year. And on a related note, I'd draw your attention that there was a survey that would be the next step in the committee's work that was included in the correspondence packet this evening. This item was not previously discussed. This was one that we ran out of time to get to.
Council discussion?
I'm curious, how much more work, timeline do we have to go on this pool committee? When are things going to wrap up? What's the timeline?
Yeah, the work of the pool committee, I think, will be completed by June. They're going to distribute the survey and solicit responses to that. They're going to take a look at those responses and hear final recommendations from our consultants. And then I expect that their work as a subcommittee will be wrapping up this summer.
You said there's 3 more meetings left?
Yeah, and you know, is it 2, is it 3, is it 4, but it's not 2 years worth.
Is this subcommittee subject to the open meeting law?
Yes, it is, and we've been compliant with that. We post their meetings and keep minutes.
Council, other questions?
I should say, Mayor, I'm sorry, I want to answer that a little more specifically. This committee is not, according to the law, subject to the open meeting law. The City of Victoria is choosing a broader interpretation, and so has operated the committee in accordance with the open meeting law by posting minutes and agendas. That's a same answer, but just a little more precise.
So is this committee, are we recording those meetings?
We do not record. There's no requirement of the law to record them, but we do post the agendas, post the meeting dates and places, and take minutes.
Right. Can you remind me, when we had the workshop and this whole discussion about recording meetings, where did we land on that?
We're going to recircle on that one as well. We did not discuss specifically whether the pool committee would be recorded.
All right. I personally think that these committees should be recorded. We've already seen, even in tonight's meeting, there was some discussion about amending the workshop meeting minutes. In previous council meetings, since the new council took office, we talked about there were questions about a finance committee meeting back in 2016. And then since we had the workshop where we originally discussed these, my proposals as far as some potential reforms, that workshop, which was a council workshop, was not recorded, but citizens have asked me about it, but they can't go back and see, since there's no video or audio recording of that workshop, they obviously can't go back and see the discussions and the points and counterpoints and the different opinions of the various council members. To me, this gets to a fundamental issue of transparency. These committees do conduct city business. They do bring recommendations up that have to be reviewed and approved by the council. But as I mentioned previously, Cindy does a great job, but she's not a trained stenographer. And I view the meeting minutes as nothing more as kind of an index to give you an idea of what's discussed. But if you really want to know all of the particulars, you almost need a recording or a video recording. And so that is my particular point of view and why I want recordings made. And I don't think it costs us anything. It's easy to do, and it allows residents to get more involved if they want to go and look at a particular issue. So, council, comments? I jumped ahead, I'm sorry.
That's okay. How would you like to go back to the pool question, or would you like me to jump ahead to?
The pool is, this ties into the pool. Unless the council objects, let's just move on from the pool and go to what I think is the core issue here that's left, that's undecided, and that is recording.
What's the resolution of the pool?
Yeah, let's finish the pool. Let's finish these things. And so the pool was created, the pool subcommittee was created to get a focused group of individuals to be able to address the issue and present it back to council with a recommendation. And my interpretation of that is if a recommendation is to come back to council, that it would be folded into the Park and Rec Committee at an appropriate time. If the Park and Rec Committee wants to participate in this, that's fine. If the pool subcommittee wants to fold into the Park and Rec Committee, I think that's fine. But the original reason for doing so is we had a group of individuals that were, if I'm correct, Councilmember Striegel, partly outside of the Park and Rec Committee and wanted to bring this issue to council. And we agreed that given the survey priority of the citizens, that this is something that should be looked at. And so I don't see any need to change this. If they are coming back in June or July with a recommendation and it gets folded into the Park and Rec Committee, then I think we're fine.
Yeah, I would agree. I didn't realize there was so little time left. So at this point, understanding that, let's just go ahead and keep it as is unless the council has any objections. All right, so we'll leave the pool committee as is. The next one, Lauren?
Proposal number 7 is the committee selection and appointment process. And as I noted in the staff report, the process for interview and appointment to committees has varied over the years. Over the last 2 or so years that I've been here, the practice that we've used is that the City Council would interview in a group format applicants for the Park and Rec Committee, the Planning Commission, and the Finance Committee. The Victoria for a Lifetime Committee conducted their own interviews, whether that would be the entire committee, chair conversations, made a recommendation to the City Council, and those appointments were typically made on the consent agenda. And other subcommittees were done in a similar fashion with recommendation of the chair of that committee or with staff. And so what we'd like to do, I think, is have a streamlined process that's consistent. What I would recommend is that the City Council continue to interview candidates for the Park and Rec, Planning Commission, and Finance Committee members. One practice that has come and gone over the years is for members of that committee to also conduct interviews for members. I would like to eliminate that practice and have all the interviews be done at the City Council level, maintaining that group format, and make no changes to Victoria for a Lifetime or other subcommittees.
So interview for every committee but Victoria for a Lifetime and
Yeah,
the Planning
and
Commission.
So the City Council would interview Planning Commission applicants, Finance Committee applicants, and Park and Rec Committee applicants. Yes.
All right, I would not have any objections to that. Council comments?
I think there's some merit to members of the Planning Commission conducting their own interview process as well, and then move forward. I think that's what's been done in the past, and I've been through it several times. So I would recommend that the Planning Commission still conduct their own and then make recommendations, but we also interview all of the applicants as well. So a little bit of a change, but I think there's merit to that.
Sure. May I respond?
Please.
We talked about this internally, and you make a point that we wrestled with as well. I think it is helpful for the Planning Commission, who has served with, in many cases, or will serve with the members to conduct interviews. Ultimately, the reason I'm recommending that we go away from that practice is that the Planning Commission members, many have shared that that's not a comfortable position for them to be in. That isn't what they've signed up for. When they're interviewing what they would consider their colleagues, it's not a comfortable position for them to be in. And also, the council is the one that's responsibility is to implement that policy. And so to look for those members that they feel are going to best represent what the council is looking for in terms of knowledge and expertise and geography and the other things we've looked at. But we talked about that point at length, so I understand where you're coming from.
An alternative would be to have a couple members of the Planning Commission join the City Council when they do the interviews.
Sure. If you wanted to ask for a couple of representatives that would be comfortable and at least listen in on the interviews, yeah, that.
So other comments, Council? I guess at this point, it looks like we have a consensus on the council to implement and take the staff recommendations. Is that accurate?
I would say.
Yes?
Yes.
As you know, applications, our terms begin April 1st, and so we received the last deadline for applications was Friday, February 10th. So over the next 3 or so meetings, you will see those group interviews being scheduled and participate in those so that we can hopefully have appointments by the March 27th meeting for those April 1.
That works.
And so for those that applied that have been following up with us, I'll contact everyone tomorrow and give a better idea of schedule. Number 8 relates to an item that you approved tonight regarding the comp plan. One of the staff recommendations for the comp plan is that a core component be a steering committee of approximately 12 members. Staff is suggesting that it would be 2 planning commissioners, 1 to 2 Park and Rec Committee members, 1 Victoria for a Lifetime member, and the remainder would be community members with a diverse representation of profession, neighborhood, age, et cetera. We are on a bit of a timeline getting the comp plan kicked off, and so earlier today I reached out to the council via email to ask if you would be available for a special meeting to interview applicants on March 6th, with appointments desired by March 13th if possible. We'd like, if the council agrees that a steering committee would be an important component for the work we're about to undertake, we would begin soliciting applications for that committee tomorrow.
Just out of curiosity, what's your reasoning for getting some people from some of the committees?
Sure. The reasoning is that the comp plan is a very complex and technical document. It's hundreds of pages, and those are folks that are already invested in the community that have a nice base knowledge for how decisions have been made in the past, what our inventory of things like park and rec or housing are. And so I think what they could bring is a base level of knowledge and context that would work nicely with someone who maybe lives in Victoria, loves it, but doesn't necessarily understand the inner workings of how we accomplish our work.
Got it. Thanks. Council?
Just a question, how many staff members will be a part of the
All of them.
No, I mean,
Ben Landhauser
it should be
will
out
Yeah.
on the table that there's
So
3, 4 staff members.
none
that are
of
part
the
it.
staff members will be specifically part of the steering committee. I think there will be staff representation depending on the topic covered by that committee on a given night throughout the 18 or so months that it will take to complete the comp plan. As Lori noted, the comp plan itself is a very diverse document in terms of topics. So there's different departments around the city that would be involved at various levels depending on when and how we're tackling that particular topic. So it will be a lot of involvement. Personally, I think the steering committee is a nice bit to have additional people participate that maybe don't already serve on a board and committee. As an example, Tom Krikis, one of our current planning commissioners, was part of that process before he'd ever served in any kind of board or committee role with the community before. It also just allows for additional insight for things that those people serving on those boards and committees don't always have at the table, just because everyone has experience or background and sees the community a little bit differently. So
just, for clarity here, is this going to be a formal committee and then hence subject to the open meeting law, or is this an ad hoc committee? How does it fit into that?
I'm suggesting that this would be a formal committee that's appointed by the city council that, again, under the law is not technically subject to the open meeting law, but it would be our intention to post all meetings and keep minutes. Our intention right now is that they would meet 8 times between now and September of 2018.
So a formal committee for the duration of this work?
Correct.
All right.
Lori, I think the steering committee is a very good idea. I am curious about your thoughts about having, or why not have, staff members be formal parts of that, both from a, kind of resident expert on staff as it were as part of that steering committee, but also largely going to end up having to live with it, right? So it would seem like that would be a good idea, but
I think it's a great question, and I imagine it will function much like the Finance Committee, which you've had the opportunity to serve on. Certainly, those meetings, staff fully participates, shares in the brainstorming and the ideas, but at the end, if there were to be a vote or a head nod, as is more common on the Finance Committee, we typically don't participate in that portion. Just that little bit of delineation between our role as staff in terms of making recommendations, but at the end of the day, leaving those policy decisions, ultimately to you, but to the committee. But I certainly agree that we'll be active participants and we'll be offering the kind of advice and expertise that I know you rely on us for.
okay, and that makes sense. And then I guess sort of secondary to that is, Do you have an estimate of kind of percentage or hours or something that you and your staff will be contributing to the, I mean, I know it's an enormous effort, so
Yeah.
I worry a little bit about the standard flow of business that the city manages.
Certainly, you're absolutely right. It is a very significant project. It's one of the reasons that we don't take it on in-house. Occasionally, larger cities will engage consultants only to a small degree. If they have that in-house capability, that would never be possible for us. Ben, have you given any hours estimates?
You know, in terms of number of meetings, I know the steering committee, as you said, would have 8 meetings. We'd also be looking at kind of regular engagement with Planning Commission, Council, Parks and Rec Committee as we go through that process. That would be staff-led. If those steering committee meetings are probably roughly an hour and a half, 2 hours each, start give you some framework for what that is. There'd also be some standard open houses. I think we have 3 or 4 of them scheduled throughout the entire process. Those will be a couple hours apiece, depending on what event it is. We've had talk about more of a pop-up engagement, where maybe we piggyback on a classic car night or a Volksfest, and we're there for the duration of that event, presenting information and soliciting feedback. It's going to be more hours than what we have when we're not in comp plan mode, but they're probably necessary hours and things that we can accommodate.
You might hear us say things like, we'd love to get to that, but we're working on the comp plan.
With staff not on the committee, who's the chair of the committee?
I don't know that we've specifically discussed that. I don't know if the committee would elect a chair as is.
It'd be
custom.
typical process is that someone in the committee, probably that has background, usually you'd find an existing board or committee member that's been in a similar role before, that they can more just open dialogue and defer to the consultant to lead the discussion. It's not a huge task per se. I'd say it functions much more like what our the council workshops function like, where you have someone that's designated to say, yep, we're all here, let's get started, and then from there it kind of goes into the consultant's hands to facilitate discussion.
Okay, council, it sounds like we have a consensus for them to, for staff to draw up. I assume since this is a formal committee, we need to formally vote on it when we have a resolution forming the committee with the rules around it. And as part of that, I think when the resolution is ready, using our process that we've used before, we should probably assign a council member as a liaison. Or is that typically not done in this case?
Yeah, I would suggest that we do not have a council liaison to this committee. The council is going to have many opportunities to be involved in the comp plan, and we will expect that. What we find when there is a council person in the room for this kind of work is that everyone sort of turns and goes, I don't know, council member, what do you think? And what we really want this
we're a
committee to
hindrance more
function
than a
at
help.
is really hearing from our residents.
Got it. I'm fine with that. Council? Then can you draw up or have what it is that the council needs to review and approve? I'm assuming there's a resolution that's required to formally create a committee?
Yeah, so what we'll do is tomorrow we'll hit the ground and spread the word that we are looking for applicants for this committee. We'll use the same committee application I think that we've used for other committees. We will solicit interest, and we will schedule interviews for a special meeting on March 6th for the council to meet those individuals that are interested in serving on this committee. And then on the March 13th, you would see an agenda statement and a motion to formally create the committee and appoint those members.
Got it. Council, any other comments? Okay, next item.
Thank you. Number 9, we created a water focus group in 2016 when we were first beginning to talk about the possible need for well number 5. At that point, the council really wanted to take a deeper dive into how are we using water, how will we be using water in the future, how could we use water differently, and so we appointed members to that committee. Development was very strong. We had big projects like the comp plan, and that committee has not met yet. What we would like to do is have that committee begin meeting in March. We did include in the packet an overview of what those meetings would look like. We have 2 of the meeting dates set in April and May. There'll be a total of 4 meetings, what we're thinking right now. The reason I wanted to bring this up is just to say, because the committee hasn't met yet, this would be a great time for additional members. If you know anyone that is interested in serving on the Water Task Force, I think on your next meeting agenda, we may have 2 additional appointments. We sent out a postcard to the residential users, the top 100 in the city, and we got a couple of phone calls kind of saying, me, really? And we use that as a good opportunity to say, maybe you'd like to be on our task force. As you'll recall, Councilman Vogt and Councilman Striegel had been appointed and agreed to serve on that task force. I don't need any action here. Like I said, if you know somebody that's interested, have them give Kara or I a call.
Perfect. Council, any questions, additions?
Great.
Okay.
So the remaining items then would be to circle back through the 4 proposals that we discussed briefly at our workshop and just confirm that we are all in agreement on what we decided. Proposal number 1 was to implement a precinct system for committee appointments. The decision made at the workshop was to continue to use geography as a factor when considering appointments, but not to formalize the requirement. Proposal number 2 was to record audio of each committee meeting, and at the time we were talking about Victoria for a Lifetime, Finance Committee, Park and Rec Committee, and Planning Commission. I understand that there's been quite a bit of discussion on this item tonight in the intervening time, and so I think this is one where we would revisit that discussion. I did provide in the packet the cost that would be incurred if we were to begin recording and streaming Planning Commission meetings, similar to what we do for City Council meetings. A couple of council members had asked me to look into that based on some feedback that's been coming in from the public. I'm suggesting that we go ahead and do that and evaluate after we've been doing it for a year what that utilization looks like. I turn it back over to you for discussion.
The council, as Lori goes through these, if you see any issues, please speak up. Otherwise, we'll just roll through these. Next one.
I would like some direction on this one. So the plan at this time, based on what we heard at the last meeting, would be to audio record Planning Commission, audio record Finance Committee, and audio record Park and Rec Committee. We decided earlier this evening we would not record Victoria for a Lifetime Committee. I've heard individually that there's some interest in perhaps not recording Park and Rec and Finance Committee, but alternatively streaming Planning Commission like we do with City Council. So if you wouldn't mind taking a couple moments to give me direction on where we are on this issue, that would be helpful.
My understanding is that we did agree for Park and Rec, drawing a blank at the finance, that we would record those. And the same thing for the Planning Commission as far as the streaming and reevaluate it. So that's what I remember that we discussed and agreed to. Council, is it anybody?
So I recall that also, but I'm questioning my agreement to that. And the concern I have is with the Park and Rec Committee. I've been a liaison to that committee, and many times the discussion, it would be extremely challenging for someone listening to a recording or watching to understand what's going on, just the nature of what is being discussed. And it's looking at, I can remember 10 different plans for a park drawings, and we have to go around and vote and pick on one of those. And it's really hard to do from a recording standpoint to get that to come across. There are also a lot of open discussions that align similarly to the Victoria for a Lifetime Committee, where I would be concerned that it would reduce the amount of interaction. So I'm questioning the need to record the Park and Rec Committee.
Other council members? Okay, well, we had agreed back at the workshop that we would go ahead and do that. So do we still have a consensus as to take that approach? Council members need some input. I obviously want to do it. Council member Crowley is rethinking it. I want to see if we've got a consensus here, a majority.
I guess I share that sort of reconsideration point, as I stated earlier, regarding the Victoria for a Lifetime Committee. And again, I think people bring their personal experiences to these meetings, and I wouldn't want to dampen that conversation by doing that. So I would not support that.
And just to reiterate, I think we already agreed that Victoria for a Lifetime will not be recorded, but recording the Park and Rec, that from what I understand, it's done in Chanhassen. I think we could try it for a while. We don't have to lock ourselves in. We could try it for a year, see how it goes. I know it could be a challenge. I've been to these Park and Rec meetings myself, and there's a number of members, and having one recorder in the middle might be challenging to hear everyone speak. But I'm willing to give it a try and see how it works.
Councilman Vogt?
I think we should try it for a year. And do we have anybody from the Park and Rec Committee in the audience?
How many? 2? 4? 3?
What is the general feeling on the committee? Maybe we could have a few comments from Mr. Carlson?
I'm kind of agnostic about it. I mean, we have minutes, that's good. We mentioned about having videos of it.
Excuse me, just for the record, could you please come up, introduce yourself, and give your address so we have that recorded?
I really appreciated the opportunity to do this today.
Sorry to catch you.
John Carlson, I live on Tilia Lane in Victoria, and I love coming to the meetings when you're in the back and can listen and not have to be in the front. I'd be interested in the comments of our other two members, and also, I respect, what our staff would like to see as well. I think the minutes work fine, and I'm fine with that. I guess by default, I would say the minutes are fine. Would I have a problem with audio recording? No, I think that'd be okay. I do agree that even with an audio recording, you miss something. And if we wanted to have the things live streamed, I'd be fine with that too. I guess we all have to just take our courage pill and share our views and not hold back. What it might do is actually provide a little more formality to the thing, and there's pros and cons to that, and that wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing. So I think we should just not spend too much capital of time and resources in making a decision, and just make a decision and move forward. And I hope we'd be just fine. I would hate to see people not wanting to join the committee because of any actions we would take in terms of formality, but I'm not sure that would be the case.
Thank you. Would you like to come up and add anything?
Julie Hesse, 8360 River Birch Court, member of the Park and Rec Committee. I think many of the council members have a good point. These are citizens that are spending a lot of time doing things for their city, and it sends a message that there is some nefarious activities or something that we're doing wrong that we need to have monitoring. They're open meetings. Anybody can come. We welcome everybody from the neighborhoods whose park we may be making decisions about. We have meetings with all of the neighborhoods. It's an open meeting, and it wouldn't bother me if it were recorded. But I think what you're going to see across the city is less citizens coming forward for these committees. And I don't think that that's the council's intention, but I think that's going to be the ramifications of all of this digging down into committees when you want citizens to come forward and help and make it a better city.
Okay, thank you.
Teresa Gregory, 1885 Steiger Lake Lane, Victoria. I'm on the Park and Rec Committee, and I guess I don't see a big problem with recording or not recording. I think we have discussions on the agenda. Everybody says their thoughts, and I don't think it's going to make any difference if it's recorded or not.
Perfect.
I don't think people are going to be scared of it.
Thank you. Well, it seems like we have a majority of 3 council members that want to record it. Is there any other further discussion with the council? If not, we'll move forward. And Lori, does that provide you what you need?
Yeah, the one thing I would like to clarify is that we had not previously discussed live streaming and videoing Planning Commission. There is an additional cost that we've estimated at about $3,900. That was not budgeted for in 2017. It's something we can figure it out if that's the will of the council, and I'm recommending that. I think it would be a good idea.
Yeah, I actually think that is a good idea. I would like to see the Planning Commission live streamed.
No objections? Council members, any other comments?
I will need to work with our vendors, so I will make sure that it's announced when they will be able to commence that service. They're obviously going to need to schedule staff. Thank you. Ben?
Lori, I think similar to the discussion with the Park and Recreation Committee members that are here, I think there's a planning commissioner that had a thought that they wanted to volunteer on the live recording as well.
One quick point of order. It's not on the agenda, so I don't know if we can talk about it, but the fact that the council workshops themselves are not recorded.
Yes, I'm sorry. That was in the memo, so it's appropriate. I neglected to include it in this PowerPoint slide, but that was in the memo, so it's appropriate to talk about it.
Okay. I would like to see the council workshops where we discuss these kinds of issues, and there's be more of them recorded. Video probably preferred. We're videoed all the time anyways. I wouldn't say that we need to live stream them, but at least record them and have them available, because people would like to see, especially when they're limited to typically one topic. We go into depth in some of these issues. There's a lot of debate back and forth, and I think we have them recorded because the vast majority of residents can't make these meetings, and this gives them the opportunity to go ahead and review what actually happens, and then hopefully get more involved in the particular item, whatever it is. So, council discussion?
Is the cost higher for live streaming as opposed to just video recording?
The issue comes that we need an audio tech to operate the video equipment. And so we have a third-party vendor that we use for that at $60.
So it is more expensive to live stream than just a video record?
Even just to video record, I still need somebody to operate the video equipment.
But we're basically paying $65 an hour, and then we post it on the website or post a link to it.
Correct.
Okay.
So, and we do, 4 or 5 of these a year. We're talking a few $100s.
For workshops?
Yeah, for workshops. It's $65 times every workshop that we were.
Yeah, we do more than 4 or 5.
We do.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Almost every meeting.
And that's $65 an hour, right?
Correct.
But still, I think it's a good idea. I agree with the workshops. I think it's fine.
Yeah, we're elected officials. I think being on camera is absolutely part of the role.
So, it sounds like we have a consensus then?
You do still have the planning commissioner that would like to speak.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Decision.
Derek Gunderson, 1265, 79 and a half Street, Vice Chair of the Planning Commission. Honestly, I've been a commissioner since 2009 in some form or shape for cities, whether it's Parks and Rec or the Planning Commission. I think I'm pretty ambiguous about the Planning Commission. Live streaming the information, I think some of their nuances that are good. But it gets down to a cost item for me on what it costs the city to record all meetings. If we're going to be transparent on one, I think we need to be transparent on all of them. And that's going to cost a significant amount. I think with having Parks and Rec Commission experience out of Eden Prairie, you do have packets with multiple visual items that make sense to look at and see. And while those are posted on the website, they're big files and not everybody likes to download them. Part of the Planning Commission, we meet twice a year, plus any special workshops or other meetings that we may be a part of through the process. If we're arguing about an item on a check for $4,000, what are we going to do when we add 5 commissions, workshops, and other items to a recording agenda? I'm not sure if that's the way that we need to go, but if we're going to do it, or if council chooses in the city, that's the direction of the city, meetings should be here for all commissions. As with most cities, when I was in Eden Prairie, we came to City Hall. We didn't have it we came to City Hall where we have the infrastructure to do the recording, and we do, and that's just the way it was. People understood that's the way it was. I also think that it's important to note that I think recording does limit participation in certain ways where people may not take the time otherwise to show up on an issue. They may sit at home thinking, we've got a board, whether it's planning, parks, Victoria for a Lifetime, whoever, that's been appointed by the council to help make these decisions for us. I've said frequently, we want people to be in front and people to come to us. We want active participation. We want people to be a part of the community. I think recording will limit that in a way. I think people will be less apt to get up and speak at a park commission meeting if it's being recorded the first time around, unless they know and are gung-ho for something. Planning commission, a little tighter run in terms of what we go through and what we're deciding on, and the ordinances and things. Pretty dry stuff. You really gotta like it to do it. So I guess that's my 2 cents, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
What was the protocol in Eden Prairie for Park and Rec? Did they record, video record, one or both?
I think they were on, but my wife never said she saw me on public access 6 when I asked. So, it wasn't. If there was going to be a well-attended meeting, that we knew that there were going to be people, I believe we recorded.
Oh, so we hit or miss?
Yeah. So I mean, it wasn't an every time thing, but the benefit to doing it here, you have the infrastructure to be able to do it if it's something that's needed, if council or the commission feels that it should be. So I guess that's the way we did it. We also on meetings where we travel to sites to see. The other thing is, I'm a firm believer of when you have projects, the commissions need to be able to go out and take a travel to see some of the project sites, and that's tough to record unless you've got a videographer. And that's more from an educational standpoint for the commission, whichever it may be, to understand the effects of the project on the city. So.
All right, thank you. Laura, you have all of the information you need from the council?
I do. Thank you, Mayor.
All right, so we're done with.
As a resident?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Can I speak as a resident, as a citizen?
Council, objections?
No objections.
No. Go ahead.
No,
Yeah,
no
Go ahead,
objections.
come on.
As a concerned citizen.
Name and address,
my name
please.
is Debbie Kraft. I live at 7090 Rolling Acres Road. I've been a resident of Victoria for 18 years now. And as a citizen, I like to be able to get the information, but I can't attend every meeting. And I really appreciate the fact that it's being discussed right now to have the information recorded or videotaped so that we can get that information if we need it, or if we need to go back and go, what actually happened there, what was said, so that we can interpret for ourselves if what was said was interpreted right by this person or that person, so we know. So I am shaking right now because I think it's very important that we record some of these meetings. I agree with Paul on the Victoria for a Lifetime, and I've worked in the hospital, and I understand HIPAA rules, and I understand that people and seniors are speaking about some of the stuff that doesn't need to be recorded and shouldn't be recorded. But finance, rec center, pool committee, all these things that our tax dollars are being paid for, we need to know what it is, and we can't attend every meeting. So I think it's very important that there is at least a recording of information that's accessible by the citizens. So that's my 2 cents.
Mayor, I'll give a quick recap of where we've landed. We will be recording and live broadcasting city council workshops and planning committee meetings, and we will revisit the utilization after 1 year. We will be audio recording Finance and Park and Rec Committee meetings, and those recordings will be retained for 1 year and available upon request at City Hall. Victoria for a Lifetime will not be recorded, and subcommittee meetings or task force meetings will not be recorded at this time. And we will revisit in about a year to see how this is all working.
Council, correct?
Perfect.
Right. Last two should be quick. Proposal number 3 was to schedule formal reports from council liaisons to the city council. The current practice is to use reports of the council or the appropriate item to share updates if you are that council liaison. The council agreed that we wouldn't make any changes to that, but that we would encourage those report backs from the committee.
So I want to be perfectly clear. I don't want council members to restate what goes on the committee. I just simply want the council members to say, committee met and we talked about ABC. And literally, that's all I'm looking for. That at least alerts the residents, right? What was discussed, and then the residents can go and with the recordings and the meeting minutes, go and look at it, right? So I'm not trying to do anything more than that simple step. Council?
That's fine.
Agreed.
Agreed? Okay, I think there's consensus.
Great. The last proposal to review was that we would require open meeting law training for each committee. We agreed that because we are choosing to operate our committees in accordance with the open meeting law, that we would offer that training to each committee. It would be no more than 1 hour, but probably less, conducted by the city clerk. And I just clarify that the Open Meeting Law and Data Practices Act are closely related, so information on both items will be shared with the committees. We'll begin scheduling those trainings after the new committees are in place, and hope to accomplish those over the course of the next few months.
I would agree. Council, do we have agreement on that issue?
So open meeting law, the 1 hour training would also pertain to Victoria for a Lifetime.
It will, and Cindy and I will talk about making that convenient for committee members. Victoria for a Lifetime is easy because they meet here at City Hall during our workday, and so Cindy can attend that committee at some point and give an overview and presentation. She will do her best to make it painless.
The council, any other questions on this?
Could I make a request or ask if Mr. Aspelin would like to comment on open meeting law training for Victoria Lifetime? Do you have an opinion? That's just,
I'm fine with it.
okay.
Yeah, I'm fine with it.
All right. Cindy, were you able to capture that? Paul introduced himself before. Okay.
Okay.
That closes number 8. Lori, reports to the city manager.
There's nothing that requires your specific attention. I've included a number of items in the correspondence packet. I earlier alerted you to the pool committee survey, which will be going out starting tomorrow. Otherwise, I don't require separate discussion on any of these items tonight.
Council, does anybody want to discuss any of these items?
I have 3 separate items.
Okay. You want to do those in reports, or you want to talk about them now?
Okay, I thought we were on reports. I'm sorry.
Yep, let's go ahead. Move to reports. Go ahead.
Okay. 3 items. Item number 1, I want to congratulate staff, Ann and her staff for the rec center, recreation center. There are great things going on at the recreation center right now. I've been a member off and on over the past 4 or 5 years, and recently rejoined this fall with my family. And Saturday morning, there's a wonderful thing called Beer and Boot Camp, or Boot Camp and Beer. I think you get the priorities right. But it started off, with a dozen people or so. And this last Saturday morning, they had to open up the second half of the gym. There were so many people there, and so it's neat to see things growing like that. We have a wonderful facility in the recreation center, and thanks to staff for supporting it, and need our citizens to support it even more. That's item 1. Item 2, tonight's meeting and the first 2 meetings of the year have taken somewhat of a negative connotation, and that's disappointing for me. I would like to offer the mayor some advice. We have a wonderful city. Yes, there's some negative things going on, but we have tremendous opportunity in front of us, and it would be to our advantage to have the mayor speak of one positive thing that's going on in the city in his report. So he's asking us to report things. I would ask the mayor to find things that are positive about Victoria. Item number 3, we had a very lengthy discussion on Shuts Lake, which addressed, in part, water quality. One session ago, 2 sessions ago? The 5.5-hour meeting. But it was a very worthwhile meeting. And out of that, you know, the discussion was difficult, but out of that, I think there are a couple of good things that we can pursue. And just an idea that I would like to put forth to council and to staff, and that is that we do have a stormwater fund. In the discussions that I had with the Minnehaha Creek Watershed District, you know, they said that the water is clear, but you know, it can always get better. It doesn't mean it's in the best shape it could be. And some of the investigations that I pursued, if you look at Google Maps, and they have their little time travel function, there are actually images in the summer of Shuts Lake back through 1992. And you can see where the water clarity and the moss is coming up around the houses that have land adjacent to the shoreline. And in particular, the 2 inlets, one coming from
Madeline Creek and Swiss Mountain.
Madeline Creek and Swiss Mountain. And so what I'd like to propose is that we have an opportunity here to actually take a leadership position, not only with Minnehaha, not only within our city, but with the Minnehaha Creek Watershed District. And what I'd like to do is, I think we have some money in the stormwater fund where we can actually do some experiments to see if we can make a difference. And you know, 2 things in particular would be educating the residents on fertilizer. What can they do to minimize phosphorus input into the lake? And I'm sure the watershed district would be willing to help out with leadership of our staff. And we might be able to experiment a little bit with one or both of the inlets and see what we can do to improve the water quality coming into the lake. And if we just take a little time to focus on this and we see a difference, this becomes a model that we can take to the other lakes within Victoria. And we can actually get out in front of this nebulous thing out here that we're waiting on from a regulation standpoint, that we're budgeting what we don't know what we want to budget for. Well, maybe we can come up with some ideas in combination with the watershed district to actually have some proof that says this is what works. So I offer that to council, and I offer that to staff.
Thank you. Council, any other reports? Bob, I skipped you. Is there any report for you? Oh, I'm sorry.
Mayor, thank you. Jump there. I had hoped that this would not be necessary. However, at the first city council meeting of the year, after listening to our city attorney present a lengthy but clear and I think concise summary of our roles and responsibilities, and closing by imploring all members of the city council to only use their city email accounts to conduct city business. And then the past election, the wide range of misstatements and half-truths and pledges of real transparency, I then listened to you invite your followers to continue reaching you at your personal email address. And even after Council Member Crowley pointed out this hypocrisy, this contradiction, you defended it. That was on the record. I also implored you off the record, and you didn't back away. And I had hoped, and I let 2 meetings go by, I had hoped that with a little time and some reflection, that doing the right thing would happen, but it hasn't. And so at this point, I must insist that you retract your statement, that you direct your followers to only use your city email address to conduct city business or discuss city matters, and that you immediately remove this liability that you have personally placed on this council and the city taxpayers.
Done?
Yes.
Mr. Vos, if I'm communicating with Victoria residents because they want to talk to me about various things, and not communicating with any staff or council members about city business, is that an acceptable use of my personal email?
Well, Mayor and Council, I'd let Lori jump in at any point here, rescue me, but my understanding is the policy of the city is that that's not appropriate, that you're supposed to use the city's email provided for city business.
And the
Now,
hypocrisy
can I
is...
But what is city business?
Well, Mayor, I guess business of the city. I mean, I don't know how to answer that. Hypothetical. I mean, it's if you're corresponding with residents about city matters in your capacity as mayor. I mean, I can't obviously give you every hypothetical, but that's the city's policy, unless I'm mistaken about that. And the reason for, I mean, Lori would be better at explaining the reason for that, but one of the probably several reasons is there may be Data Practices Act requests. There have been any number of them, and it's quite difficult for the city to respond to them if we don't have access to the email.
Yeah, that's correct. And I think there's maybe a couple of different things going on. Our practice is to encourage the use of official email, but perhaps what you're referring to is that emails between a council member and an individual constituent are not considered public data unless one or the other party chooses to. So if there were a data request, those emails would not necessarily be produced unless the council member or the constituent chose to produce them. But it is easier for the city to respond if all of that communication occurs in city email. Although Bob has advised, he says it so much more eloquently. We are not the boss of the council, so we have a practice and we outline a best practice, but there isn't a legal ability for the city to tell individual council members how to operate.
But you did just say that the communications between me and a resident is not public data, unless one of the parties chooses to make it public.
That's correct.
Thank you.
But the hypocrisy of that, Mr. Mayor, is that you had us sit on a stand and interrogate us with your attorney when the the city's policy was to use personal email, and tell us that that was wrong. And now you're doing the exact same thing. And so, I'm sorry, that is, in my mind, just unconscionable. And
there's a fundamental difference when you're talking with another council member making decisions on pending business before the city, which is what the judge said was serial communications. I'm not communicating with any staff, nor am I communicating with any city council members. So, Bob, do you have any reports?
I don't, Mayor. Thank you.
All right, my report is I do have a lot of positive things to say about the city, and I suggest you pick up the next Chanhassen Villager and read my column in there, and that's where you'll find it. At this point, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? None? We're adjourned.